Hi students, and welcome to another class. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about this book that I borrowed from the library. It's a very cool book, and this is not the first time I'm seeing this book. So it is in the library, and if you ever get a chance to find yourself walking around the library, definitely take a look at this book. Even though it's so small, it is actually packed with a lot of incredible information. Some of the highlights I will go through it with you today in my lesson. It is known as the Fashion Designer's Directory of Shape and Style, which is, I think, super important. It's really cool. I really like this book. It's not a complete book because it's fairly old. However, some of the most basic things that we do in fashion design in terms of shape and silhouettes and stuff like that, you will find it in this book. I think it's a very nice book, so let's go into my lesson and let's look at some of the details and highlights of this book. See you in the lesson. Hi students, let's just dive straight into the lesson. Okay, getting started, let me try to read a couple of things that's there in case you don't see. Of course, anything that you see in this video, I will put the image in Telegram so that way you can have a copy of it for yourself, that you can actually keep a record of it. I will put all the pictures in there, okay? So no problem. Now, getting started. Successful design is underpinned by a well-defined idea or set of ideas. Let me just continue reading it and then I will explain a little bit more further. So any aspiring designer should do research. A sketchbook is an excellent way of collecting ideas, and these ideas are developed through drawing, note-taking, personal translation or interpretation, and investigation before they're taken from initial ideas into the actual garments. Okay, this slide that you're looking at right now is a lesson on its own. It's a really big deal, and a lot of people don't really do this. They just think fashion design is you just start designing ideas, and I think for some people I think it's kind of okay actually if you're doing it that way. Basically, when we are designing ideas, what happens is a lot of us tend to start sketching immediately. We start thinking that, oh, as we sketch, the ideas will come along and stuff like that. And I think that's okay. It's all about the process. It's about the process of how individual designers actually would like to approach their subject matter. But I think one of the more interesting thing, and especially like this book is saying, is you need to start somewhere, in the sense of like sometimes, see what happens is sometimes you don't get inspired. Sometimes you're designing something and then you just end up copying somebody, in other words. But what you don't understand is, I don't think it's a problem with copying somebody. What you should do is you should try to translate someone's idea in a better way. That could be considered as you're being influenced. You're being influenced with design ideas and you're inspired by other people or how they're designing, and you want to take that inspiration and translate into something that is your own. And there's nothing wrong with that. But planning and researching and investigating a little bit into what you're trying to do is a process that a lot of us, either we're lazy or we just want to bypass it. But it's such an important process because I feel that it is the fun part of designing. It's one thing to sit down and just design stuff. It's another thing to really come into design with a certain set of thoughts or certain inspirations. Like maybe you watched a movie, or maybe you are looking at a painting and you realize that the painting colors are so cool, or some people have actually been inspired in such a way where they have actually looked at paintings and said, can we use that painting as an artwork into our design, which is kind of really cool. So like you need to practice your eye a little bit, and that's one thing that I actually have an episode on YouTube that talks about the practiced eye. Basically means you are training your eye to start looking at certain things that you normally would miss. For example, if you are watching a movie, let's say you watched a movie for the first time, you're impressed by the movie, you liked it, it was very cool. But you notice that if you watch the movie the second time, you will actually enjoy the movie more, because now your eye is practiced. Your eye is looking at the movie and it already knows what's going to happen, what's the next scene. But all these little details that you probably missed the first time you watched a movie will actually show up the second time you watch a movie. And I think in many cases, you will enjoy watching the movie the second time much better than you are watching it the first time. If you're listening to this lesson right now, chances are you will just watch this lesson, listen to it one time, and then you think you know it all. But what you don't know is that if you watch this lesson a second time, chances are you will hear me say something that you did not hear me say it the first time, and it's exactly the same recording. That's the same thing with understanding fashion design, is when you are actually doing things, when you're approaching the subject, and here it says, the sketchbook is an excellent way of collecting ideas, and the ideas are developed through drawing and note-taking, is because we don't really see things right away the first time, but we will see it the second time. So that's why taking down notes is such an important skill that a lot of designers, well, the good designers do it because that's their secret. They take down notes, they take down pictures, Polaroids, they take down every single thing because they know that even no matter how expert they are, they cannot remember everything. That's why having a sketchbook, or in our language, we call it a design journal. I'm sure you guys remember, I keep talking about design journal all the time, is so important because it's where you put all your ideas down. An idea might not work today, but 2 weeks from today, you may look at that idea and say, oh my God, I can really use it. And it's your idea because it's your book, you wrote it down. So that's why having a sketchbook or a design journal is very, very critical. I continue by reading the slide. Research is a multi-layered and highly individual process. Oh my God, I should underline this. Research is a multi-layered and highly individual process. Visiting art galleries, museums, libraries, bookshops, which we don't do. I know you don't do that. You should do it, and you don't do it. Even though now we have, we are in the situation of the pandemic, so we are not exactly walking around a lot. But if you ever get a chance to go into certain galleries or certain art shops or even the museums, you never know where your inspiration will come from. That's the best part about designing, and that's the best part about designing in fashion, is we just don't know where the ideas can really come from. I continue, even flea markets and boot sales, looking at different art and design movements. We are lucky, all of us today, we just turn on our phone and we can actually travel to any part of the planet and look at all kinds of culture and all kinds of stuff. So this is a very important thing that, when you're getting started, that you really actually, you spend enough time in this stage of the design process. You don't rush into design right away. You really take your own sweet time to try to find out whatever you can see, whatever you can gather, whatever information you can actually have. I think that is a very important process that most young designers, I'm sorry to say, but they really don't do. They just want to fly straight into the fashion show and they want to become famous like tomorrow morning before breakfast, It doesn't work like that, guys, okay? Armani is Armani, but he's 40 years in the business. Calvin Klein is Calvin Klein, again, 40 years in the business. Donna Karan, Yves Saint Laurent, Chanel is like what? It's like a little bit less than 100 years in business. So please, there is a process, there is a time thing. It doesn't mean that you will not get there. It just means that you must understand that you don't become famous tomorrow. You become famous as you grow slowly by refining your process. Anyway, let me continue. Here's the research stage, which is kind of cool. I'm going to go through it 2 parts only. I'm not going to read the whole thing, of course. One is finding your inspiration, and the other one is actually knowing what kind of designer you are. I actually like this because finding inspiration basically means you're trying to see how people dress and why they do that. So you ask yourself, you're investigating the idea, you want to know what is going on. But the second one is really important, is what kind of designer are you? Now, in my previous lessons, I think in somewhere I was talking about customer profile. And the key thing in customer profile is that you understand who your customer is. You have an idea of Who are you trying to sell to? Are you just trying to sell to just anybody? And even if you're trying to sell to anybody, you still have to make a profile to tell yourself like, hey, listen, these are my customers. These are the people that I would love to sell to. And this is the age group. This is the kind of work that they do. They go to school or they go to college, or they're married at home, or they're working business professionals, or they are people who love to go to parties every night, going to the club every night. You need to know and define a few things of who your customer is, so that way you can actually design and cater to their lifestyle. Finding your inspiration basically means you do a little bit of a research into cultures. If you look at something that is very Japanese in nature, there's a good chance that you are probably going to, do a lot of research on Japan. If you are looking at something that is very English in nature, then obviously you're going to look at London and outside London, right? England and maybe the history of England and stuff like that, to find out, what kind of ideas that you can get in order for you to come up with a collection. What kind of designer you are here? It says British designer John Galliano is well known for his exuberant, really crazy styling. But then on the other hand, if you look at American designer Calvin Klein, is a little bit more simple, more straight, very muted colors, very similar to Armani, of course. And then, of course, if you look at Japanese designer Issey Miyake, looks more for futuristic in his fabrication. Everybody knows that Miyake is a designer that is always thinking about the future, and he really heavily relies on his fabrication. Like, he works with textile designers, fabric designers who are using a lot of technology into their fabric, so that way he uses that as part of his design process. Mood boards. All right, I totally love mood boards. I remember spending so many endless hours in the late evening coming up with mood boards. Oh my God, it was such a process. But it was such an interesting process, especially when you're working with so many designers in New York, late at night. We call in pizza and buffalo wings, and then we sit down and we just make mood boards. But mood boards is such a cool way of you actually trying to turn your visualization, trying to turn on your visuals. You're trying to turn your visuals into something tangible. That means something that you can see and touch. It's one thing if I tell you I'm thinking about tweeds. It's another thing for me to take actual tweed cuttings or photographs and put it on a board and telling you, listen, that's what I'm talking about. And then you get an idea, at least you get an idea of the neighborhood of where the design creativeness is going to, try to come from. Mood boards it's a very big deal. It's a subject on its own, actually. And mood boards is the idea for a mood board is basically to let you know what is going to be the underlining theme of your collection or of the designs that you're trying to do.